Hello and welcome. Today's the exciting day. As I told you, the government has released what's going to happen with your GCSE and A-level results. I'm going to give you the full lowdown right now. So good news to start with, schools will make predictions largely based on your mock grades, although they can use homework that you've done in the past, in classwork, and they are going to add on what they think you would have done between now or between the mocks and the final exams. Now, obviously, that is not an exact science, and teachers will try and predict the highest grade they possibly can for you because they want to be fair. Schools will then rank everybody in the year group for that subject, and they will give the grades in that rank order and send that off to the government. Okay. Many schools I know are asking students to do work now in year 11. That's natural because they're being cautious, but the government have said, stop that. We don't want you to count any work that the students have done while they're at home. You don't need to do that. Stop asking the students to do extra GCSE work. They've also said that even if you're doing an NEA, a non-examined assessment, or as we used to call it, coursework, you do not have to finish your coursework. So if you're doing an NEA, you do not have to finish it. The government have said this, not only do they not have to finish it, but we're not going to ask schools to send in examples of the work, examples of the mocks. We're just going to take the teacher predictions. Now, obviously, this will lead to quite a few problems because teachers will predict the best. But actually, when students turn up in the exam, they don't always meet those predictions, do they? Teachers like to think you would have revised really hard and you do really well, and then actually that's not always the case. So what will the government do nationally with this data? Teacher predictions on one hand, and then the actual results that the government would have expected on the other. Well, they're going to make a range of statistical adjustments. Most importantly, as I told you in my previous video, they will take your year 6 results. That's how the government always calculates progress, and it's how they always calculate grades. This is not a change. Okay, so they always have in mind how students, the current year 11 students, did when they were in year 6, and that gives them a reasonable prediction of how they should do in year 11. And if the year 11s do much better, well, then they adjust the grades downwards. And if the year 11s do much worse, they adjust the grade boundaries upwards. And that's the same as always. However, there is an added element that they can use, which they will, and they will look at how your particular school has done with their year 11. They'll say how much progress did year 11s make last year and the year before in your school, and they will adjust the grades accordingly with that as well. So all this information will be put together. Now, again, this means your grade is not an exact science. But the sad thing is, it never is. So, if you take maths, 2 senior examiners will agree 90% of the time on someone's grade. That's maths for you. If you take English literature, 2 senior examiners will look at the same bit of work and they will agree about 55% of the time. So in most subjects, you're somewhere between those things. In any year, the exam grades are not accurate. Okay, they're just a best fit. That's why 20% of exam grades normally, where they're appealed against, 20% of those are upheld. Yeah, where the senior examiner looks at it and says, actually, it should be something completely different, a different grade. So the government will allow you to appeal your results. However, they've no idea yet how that will work. And my best guess is that they'll simply ask you, if you don't like the grade, they'll ask you to sit again in the autumn, or if you prefer, in the summer of 2021. But there will be exams this autumn. By autumn, I think the government mean late September or October. They haven't put a date on it. But those exams are all ready, of course. The exam boards wrote them for this summer, so there won't be a massive delay. What sort of grades should you appeal about? Well, it's pointless appealing for a grade that you don't need, that's just about your vanity, really. If you particularly need a grade 7 rather than a grade 5, by all means appeal. Now, there is a bit of bad news attached to these predicted grades, because obviously you'll want to get in touch with your school straight away and say, well, what grade are you going to predict me? Because that will help me decide whether I need to take the exam in the autumn, because your prediction isn't what I need or what I want. But unfortunately, the government have said no. Do not give out your predicted grades. We don't want teachers and head teachers to feel under pressure from students and parents to give out the grades, because they'll just get bombarded. Obviously, everybody wants a high grade. So your school will not tell you what your predicted grades are. Now, this is really bad news if you desperately need a grade. So, your college might have said you're doing Maths A level, you need a grade 7, or everybody is set at least a grade 4 for Maths and English. How do you find out if that's you? Well, there is a phrase I think that you can use that will help your schools out, and it's this. Do you think I'm at risk of not getting such and such a grade? That phrase, do you think I'm at risk, allows the teacher to say no, because they know you're on a really good grade, or it allows the teacher to say, yes, I think you might be at risk, where they're not committing themselves to saying you're only going to get a grade 3 or you're only going to get a grade 4. And I think most schools will be happy to say, I think you may be at risk. This will allow you to think, I need to sit that exam in the autumn, and you can get planning for it now. But remember, you'd only do that for the exams where you absolutely need those grades. Because for most of you, your GCSE grades will not matter once you've got A-level grades, and you'd be much, much better off spending your time now learning your A-level content and reading around your subject, getting passionate about it. That will give you far more benefit than worrying about your GCSEs and revising content which you're probably not going to need. So the grades will be handed by schools to the government at the earliest in the 29th of May. And you will get your final grade either at the end of July or the beginning of August. The government's really keen that universities and colleges know what sort of exam results you've got. And that also gives you some time. Let's say they come out on the 3rd of August and you think, God damn, I've not got the grade I need. That gives you some time to do, say, 6, 7, 8 weeks of revision, knowing that that exam is coming up again in the autumn and you can boost your grade. Now, although this seems a kind of a Mickey Mouse way to get your grades, the government have said, look, these are not Mickey Mouse qualifications. We've got universities and colleges to agree that they will treat these grades as the real thing. So just take that on trust. That's 100% true. Whatever grade you get is a real grade. If you retake, many students will say, what happens if I retake and I get a lower grade? You get to keep both grades. Okay, so the one that's done on predictions, if it's higher than the actual grade when you retake, you count the higher grade. You don't have to worry about the one that you did with a retake. Okay, so you will keep both grades and you'll just put whichever one down is better for you, probably the highest. More bad news, sadly, for year 10s. Many year 10s do the exams early, particularly English literature, some English language, and the government have said that is not going to happen. We are not going to give grades to students who are already entered in year 10. Forget about it. The only way to get a grade is to do the exam. You can do that in the autumn 2020, or you can do it in the summer of 2021. That's just the way it is. And I've had quite a few queries from private candidates who have paid to enter for particular exams. If you've already done mocks and there are actual papers that the head of centre can make predictions on, then your predicted grade will work just as the same as everybody else. If you've not done mocks, then basically the advice is going to be take the exam as soon as it becomes available. That's just life. You may have other questions that I haven't addressed here. I will put the link to the government advice in the description below. I will also answer questions in the comments if I have to. That seems a bit harsh, doesn't it? I mean, if you're really worried. But just after my gorgeous talking face, the video will continue with the actual text that I've highlighted, so you don't have to go through this whole document. You can just look at the rest of this video and read the relevant bits that I've taken this information from. So hopefully you are much reassured and you are cracking on with getting brilliant at the subjects you're going to take in September. As usual, thank you for watching. See you soon on my channel.